Welcome back to our second part of our Manley Labs discussion. What we're going to talk about now is the neoclassic 300B Preamp. It's been a long staple in the line of their products, and I'm going to go through and ask a couple of questions about this and find out some more about the technology. You've had quite an extensive history with vacuum tubes and a wealth of knowledge about the subject. With the resurgence of analog warmth and tube rolling, have you seen a demand for more 300B products? And do you have any future plans for new 300B products?
Well, we have two 300B preamp products right now, the 300B preamplifier and then the single-ended push-pull switching 300B power amplifier. Those have got us, as far as our line goes, we can't just stop the whole factory to go off into more 300B land. So honestly, I would say that we're not going to develop any brand new 300B products coming up anytime soon. That said, both of these products just have undergone a total interior and chassis renovation, if you will. So we've changed the structural bracing of the chassis and the finish, the type of finish that we're going to apply to it and so on. And, you know, like I always say, we put a lot of work into research and development here and a lot of engineering work. And while some of it is for new products, we're also quietly updating all of our products constantly. We're kind of known for that. So you know, if we change something small in a unit, we're not going to just all of a sudden, you know, just create a new model just because we change a small thing. I mean, other companies do that, but
sure,
we don't.
Yeah. Going off that, were there some non-negotiables when it came to the neoclassic's design and technology when it was first introduced?
Well, yeah, so David Manley originally designed this unit back in the 1990s, and actually both the 300B products were his final product. And, you know, again, like what I was just talking about, not radically changing things, that's part of when we're improving things. We don't want to improve things with and really screw the sound up. You know, if we've got it nailed, it's going to stay the same, you know, and I don't know, there's a lot of hype around people upgrading things constantly, and it's like, we like to think we got it really great the first time. So sometimes over the years we've used like different brands of coupling capacitors, but for instance, the big output capacitor that's in the 300B preamplifier, that's a big rail cap. That's the same company that makes the multi-caps and so on. It's a great sounding part. It's very reliable. It's coupling all the sound through to our Manley output transformers, and you know, why change that? It's wonderful. So there's provision for upgrading for users with different vacuum tubes and stuff, and I'm sure you're going to ask me about that in a minute.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's your favorite tube to pair with the Neo?
Yeah, well, like I said to you earlier, my favorite vacuum tubes are the ones I can get a lot of and that function and work. You know,
right, consistency.
Yeah, so I don't have the luxury of being able to just go buy like 2 or 8 pieces from eBay. You know what I mean? We have to be able to buy hundreds of tubes. So we're always screening all the factories that are making tubes and seeing who's got what on offer. And you know, we've been with the Electro Harmonix 300Bs. They're a really good all-around tube. And they also come to us at a decent price. I can't put in stock tubes that, you know, cost $800 a piece or something, because your retail price will be just sky high. So we'd like to leave the possible markup of that vacuum tube to just one step from distribution, and not, you know, distribution to OEM to the customer, to the dealer to the customer, you know. So there's economic things involved in that as well.
Without a doubt. And how do you handle like new old stock tube needs? I mean, there are some tubes obviously that aren't really being produced anymore. You know, I mean, do you have a big backlog of some of the tubes that, you know, obviously you can't get your hands on today, right?
Yeah, I mean, historically, you know, like I remember back in the 90s, David found this large stash of like 18,000 of one tube type we use all over the place, you know, and it's like that lasted us more than 20 years actually for that particular type. So, but it's kind of rare to come across those giant stashes of ex-military parts these days. So when we're planning a new product or even renovating an older product, we have to make sure that we do have good supply of vacuum tubes. That's number one. And they have to be usable and good. And the thing with the not used market, the NOS market, sometimes those tubes might have been used and pulled out of something and cleaned up and then put back into service. So, you know, because I'll tell you something, you know, when we reject vacuum tubes here, I mean, if they don't function, we throw them away. But if they're a little noisy or they don't have a good balance or they don't meet the criteria we need to get them into any unit, I mean, we'll gather them up and sell them off on the wholesale market, because that tube might be okay for somebody's guitar amplifier or a cathode follower somewhere, you know. But for vacuum tubes, we've got to be able to procure a lot for a decent price. They have to be reliable, they have to be quiet, and we have to be able to get tons of them.
Yeah. So who do you think the Neoclassic 300B is for? What kind of consumer is really looking to buy this sort of piece of artwork?
I would say that, you know, this unit has vacuum tube rectification, vacuum tube regulation. It's all tube. It's got transformers that you can switch in or out of the output stage. It's got a very big, voluptuous sound. And so if somebody has a very strident system, or maybe they're looking for some character and some flavor in the whole presentation, and that can include speakers. You know, some loudspeakers are very analytical, and maybe, you know, you want some humanity in your sound. Well, come on along, because this has it tons.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of mixing and matching solid state and tubes. So what we've been demoing the preamp on this week is we've got it connected to a Past Labs X150 power amplifier, Focal Sopra 2 speakers, and then the Oasis Phonopre and Technics 1210 turntables, and the combination of the 300Bs and the beginning of Class A and then into Class AB with the Past Labs X150 has just been a glorious match. I think sometimes too much of one thing, of solid state, or too much of tube can be a little too much, and I think the balancing point of, especially with 300Bs, I think 300Bs with a really good detailed amp, the combination is just glorious because you get the positives from both. But as you know, headphones are really important to Moon Audio, and I don't think a lot of people even realize the Neo can make for a stellar headphone amp. I think it's really gone under the radar of really being considered a headphone amp. Most people just think of it as a preamp. To be totally honest, for many years, I mean, I saw the headphone jack on there, but you know, I still said it's a preamp, right? So how about explaining the differences in the circuit path for the headphone stage versus the preamp stage? And are all the tubes being used in both situations, and what is not being used?
Yeah, so, you know, all right, so how we deal with this, you've got your input tubes here. They drive the 300B amplifying, you know, output tubes. Those go through that big old rail cap I was talking about. And then they hit the Manley output transformers, which we wind right here. In fact, this is all magnet wire here. I'm standing in front of the transformer department here at the factory, because let's emphasize that we make these here. We make these parts here. This is the output transformer for the 300B preamplifier right in my hand here. So it's a dual primary and a dual secondary, and we achieve the high and low impedance ranges, you know, and I'll explain that in a sec, by putting the secondary windings in parallel or in series, and that is selected on the impedance switch right here. That's what it's actually switching, is the secondaries. And then the next switch here, you have the choice. If you're listening to the RCA outputs, you can select through the transformer or not through the transformer. And you know, you can hear for yourself. Do you want more color of the transformer? Because vacuum tubes, we can talk about this in a second. Vacuum tubes, people always call them like warm and euphoric and colorful and all that stuff. Vacuum tubes themselves are very linear devices, and they have a lot of headroom, and oftentimes they don't produce a lot of distortion. And in this case, we have a single-ended circuit in this product. And so the harmonics of that are going to be all even order harmonics. They are very warm and friendly and flavorful, and it's like giving yourself a big hug, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, that's the inherent distortion characteristics of the preamplifier. Now we go through the transformer, or we don't go through the transformer. This is an addition to the circuit when you switch it in, when you're listening to the line output. And so you can decide if you'd like to hear this or not hear this. When you're going through the headphone outputs, you have to go through the transformer, because that's how we're matching the impedance from the anodes of the 300B vacuum tubes to your headphones.
Got you.
That's why he's in there. That's his job.
Yeah. But none of the tubes are being bypassed like in some other, there's been some other preamps with different tube sections where tubes aren't always in the headphone stage. But in this one, everything is in the path, right? We're not losing anything. If anything, we're gaining something potentially by using the transformers automatically as well. So
yeah, everything is in there all the time, except in the line output, the transformer can be switched in and out.
Sure, sure. Do the output and I think you mentioned this, the output transformers have a separate winding for the two different impedance, and that's why we've got that switch there, right? That's where you take care of the impedance characteristic issues?
Well, they have two secondary windings, and we're going to switch them in parallel or in series to get the two ranges.
And is there anything else that that people would need to know in the preamp of, differences between the direct and the transformer output? I mean, does it change the gain structure on the output that goes to your amplifier? Is there anything else you have to account for, or is it just a coloration change?
No, I think it's just a coloration change in that case. And again, when you're switching the impedance of the output here, you're not going to blow anything up mismatching to any headphone. I had somebody email me that last week actually, and I'm like, everything is safe. You can switch and listen to whatever you like the sound of best. For instance, maybe empirically it's not the right match. Maybe it's transferring less than optimum into that load. But if you like the sound of it, go for it. The headphone police are not going to come and arrest you. It's all right, and there's no chance of any kind of physical damage that you could possibly do.
I know you talk about the impedance, but what kind of, and I know there's I think in both situations, the power structure is the same. You've got 1 watt of power. What about the voltage? Can you speak a little bit about, tube amps and preamps tend to be more on the higher voltage side. Is there any concern with headphones of voltage being an issue? I know, some headphones like the Sennheiser HD800, actually those really prefer a lot of voltage because they've got a crazy impedance swing on those drivers. So a high voltage headphone amp does them justice, for example. Is there any situation you think where voltage might become an issue with a headphone if it's too low of an impedance or something, or I don't know?
I mean, it's with this product or with any product?
Yeah, with your product. Yeah, I'm talking about yours. Because I didn't see a whole lot of information on the actual voltage output at the headphone jack. We usually know what it is at the line outputs. It's usually from somewhere to 1.5 volts to 4 or 5 volts, right? At the headphone jack, what kind of voltage are you coming out of that? Is it exactly the same that's coming out the RCAs? Are you doing any kind of voltage step down or anything, or no?
I don't believe so, but to be sure, I would have to check that. So I'm sorry if I don't have
no worries.
All of that.
No, it was just something that came to mind and not so much with preamps, where the preamps don't usually have as much voltage as, say, a dedicated, a tube amp that's used for speakers that's low wattage. You can get away with using that with headphones, but sometimes the voltage is a little too much for the headphones even with tube amps. So you have to be careful. There is a little bit of balancing act there. I wouldn't imagine it with a preamp tube amp used for headphones, but some of the vacuum amplifiers, we've seen some issues in that situation. That's the only reason I brought it up. I don't think it would be an issue here.
None of our preamplifiers that we make have any problem delivering, headroom over plus 30. And we always provide very low output impedance outputs, very low impedance outputs on all our preamplifiers, and you know, this one is no exception. The transformer is able to monkey with the mating of, again, transferring the plate anode impedances down to headphone operable impedances. But voltage wise, like, we've got wild voltage swing. You know, they're running off of 400 volts or something, or whatever they are. Sorry, I'd have to look it up. I forgot. But you know, plenty of headroom, and we've got a wide variety of headphones kicking around here. We've never had any kind of matching issue with this product at all.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it through its paces next week. This week we did mostly our reviews with speakers, and I did have a chance to. Grado Labs just came out with a brand new headphone. It's the HP 100 SE, and it's a very detailed, very dynamic headphone, and the combination with these 300Bs, I mean, it was just absolutely glorious, the combination. It was fantastic. But next week, I'm going to spend a lot of times with headphones because, well, I love speakers, but headphones is where Moon Audio is really known for, so we're going to put it through its paces. I did actually try the Susvara Unveiled, which is a brand new headphone that used to be extremely hard to drive, but it's a little bit easier now. Again, 300Bs with a very dynamic headphone. What a combination. The 300B has been long one of my favorite tubes, that and a 6SN7, so I'm having a blast with this thing.
Great.
Any other things we can cover on this preamp that might be important to people?
Well, as we said, it's a headphone amplifier and it's a preamplifier, so you know, it can be the center of your whole hi-fi system.
Yep, without a doubt.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Well, EveAnna, thank you so much for this information. It's been an absolute blast.
I did remember one more thing.
Oh, yeah?
I forgot. All of our preamplifiers feature radio frequency remote controls.
Yes.
And we were the first, you know, high-end audiophile company back in the 90s to go towards the RF format instead of infrared, so you don't have to, you know, point
at it.
Point and shoot. So
and actually, that's super important for headphone listeners because they're lounging back on their couch with the headphones on and they don't want to get up and turn the knob. Yeah. I tell you what, I mean, there are very few headphone amps out there that have a remote control on them. So
in this case, we're using a motorized volume control here, so you can see it's magically pointing. And this, I could walk downstairs to the factory and it's got the range to control this thing. So it's
what a blast.
I love it. Convenience and user operability. I love all that stuff.
Well, thank you so much. For all you folks out there in Wonderland, if you've got any questions about either the Oasis that Kayla talked about or the 300B Neoclassic that I've talked about here, make sure to leave your comments before. Make sure to give thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe. And we will see you next time.